Okay, in this video we're going to look at histograms in a little bit more detail. We're going to use it to answer questions such as how old were sugar-free feb participants? So we could plot a bar chart of our age groups, but the trouble with this is that it doesn't really acknowledge the fact that our groups are of different sizes or of different widths. On the other hand, the histogram feature in Plotly that we looked at earlier, it creates its own groupings, and we might want to stick to our own. We might have chosen those for a reason. In this video, then, we're going to look at the properties of a histogram in A-level maths and how we could try to construct one in Excel. Now, here is an example of a histogram from a past A-level paper, and it shows the time taken to the nearest minute for 140 runners to complete a fun run. Now, a few things to note. First of all, there are no gaps between the bars. That's because time, our x-axis variable, is continuous, and so it doesn't make sense to leave gaps, as there isn't a gap between 1 minute starting and the next minute ending. There's no gap between 78 minutes and 79 minutes. They're joined. Also note that the bar widths are of different sizes. It's quite common to have one much wider group at the end that just collects all of the times at the upper end. Finally, note that the y-axis isn't frequency, it's frequency density. Now, this is because when we look at a histogram, the height of a bar, it's not telling us the frequency. Because if we have a really wide group, we want to avoid making it really tall by showing the frequency, because it will then look like there are loads of people in each of these times here, when in fact there aren't many. There might be quite a few over the whole lot. And so to counter this, in a histogram, we show the frequency by the area of a bar. So because the area of a rectangle is the width times the length, to work out how tall a bar needs to be, we do the frequency divided by the group width. And our final histogram will look something a bit like this. We'll have a continuous scale along the bottom. We'll have frequency density on the y-axis. Some of the groups will have different widths, and there won't be any gaps in between our bars. We need to set up a table to plot our histogram then. Firstly, let's go back to our pivot table to get the frequencies for each age group. So if you click in your pivot table, if we drop age band in here, and we've got the frequencies. If we copy these, start up a new tab, call it age, going to zoom in here, and if we paste these as values, we now want to give our this is the start of our table. We now want to give it some headers, so if we call that age bands, we call that one frequency, and actually we don't need these totals on the bottom, so I'm going to delete those. Next up, we need a group width column to tell us how wide each of these groups are. Now, how wide are these groups? The upper and lower bounds for each group are actually slightly more complex than they appear. For example, if somebody is aged 25.9 years, which group would they be in? They'd be in the first group, and so actually this group goes from 18 all the way up to 26, but not including 26, which makes the width 8 and not 7 as it looks here. And the same can be said for the other groups. So what we're going to do, we're just going to quickly add a couple more columns of the lower bound for the group and the upper bound. So the lower bound here is 18 and the upper bound is 26. 26, 36, and so on. If you've got different age groups, then you'll do the same, but for your table, and this one is going to go all the way up to 83, because the people who said they were 82, they could have been 82.999 years old, and so we want to go all the way up to 83. And then we can use these quite quickly to calculate the group width. We're going to do the upper bound, take away the lower bound, and that tells us the group width for each group. Sometimes it won't be simply kind of rounding this number up one. Sometimes it might be the case that you've been given a measurement that's been rounded to the nearest second or to the nearest minute. And so actually you might have something like 17.5 here and 25.5 here. But because when we give age, we round down to the nearest whole year below, that's what we're doing here. And we can use these then to calculate the frequency density or the height. Now, if we add a new column, frequency density, remember that to do this, we need to do frequency divided by group width, and that gives us our frequency densities there. We now need to build our continuous x-axis. Now, remember, this is going all the way from 18 up to 83. So we're just going to write a list of numbers over here from 18 all the way down to 83. Going to use that autofill like we did before. And against each of these ages, we're going to write down the height of that bar. So remember, the first bar from 18 up to 25 is going to be 17 high. So if we paste that in there, oh, what's happened here? Looking in the cell, it thinks that we want to do a calculation to work out what goes in that cell. And we can see that it thinks we're trying to do G3 divided by H3. Now that's because the formula that was in here earlier was the calculation C3 divided by D3, and it thinks if we move that over a few, we want to carry that calculation over a few. That's not what we want. We literally just want to paste that number. So instead, if we delete that, we'll copy that again. And this time we're going to paste it as a value, as we've done before. And we can do that for the rest of them. No, we can do that for the rest of them. And so on. So populate your table like this. I'm going to zoom out just to speed this up a bit. Uh, 46 up to 55. 56 up to 65. And 66 up to 82. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to select these and we're going to turn them into a what's called a clustered column chart. Now, if we go to Insert, Recommended Charts, you can see here we've got something that looks a little bit like what we want, a little bit like a histogram. If we click OK, expand it so we can see the chart a bit better. And if you double click on one of the bars, we can actually change the gap width between bars to 0. And that turns it into something as closely resembling as a histogram as we're going to get, really. Now, if we just add some axes labels, because it's important to note that first of all, this y-axis is not representing frequency, it's representing frequency density. And this scale along the bottom here shows us age in years, and we could call it something like histogram to show age distribution of participants. And we're done. So this wide group at the end here, while there are quite a lot of people in the group, it's not as high as the other groups because it's wide. The area might well be bigger than that in the other blocks, but it kind of shows us kind of on average across here how many people do we have.